Make it all happen, people. I'm gonna load this up. I'm gonna click here. Boy, I've been doing. Oh, is this one? Are we hearing me? Two, is this public? I gotta check these things now. It looks like it's public. I can see it there, and then I'm gonna wait for someone to come on and tell me I can. Oh, actually, you know what? I can test this myself. I click on my little face there on Facebook. Very appropriate. Apropos. Posts, refresh, show Adams live. Oh, there's people watching. Can you guys hear me? Let's find out. If I click this, play, and click here. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like it's working. And then I gotta mute this. Oh, yeah, I gotta mute it. Good morning, Jess. See, I don't want to have the same blooper that I had last week, which was 5 minutes of talking, arguably my most exciting content, and then not any of it coming through. Hey, Mia. Good morning. Good afternoon, Mia. That it is a little bit like I've been going through and doing this round of acknowledgments for people, and it's not free to acknowledge someone. And what I mean by that is it requires generating something. When I wake up in the morning, the way my morning looks is that I get up at 5:30. I'm like, but I move past that pretty quick because I'm kind of in it now. By the way, if you're one of these, put your name over there, say hi, let me know who you are so I can feel your presence in the space, and then you guys can chat amongst yourselves. It'll be fun. But I get up at 5:30, I meditate for 10 minutes, which is kind of a nice transition. It actually feels really good to get up and it's like I'm doing a thing. I'm in the process of waking, but there's very gentle. I find meditation a very gentle practice. I'm not very hard on myself. I don't hold it like, fuck, you're meant to be focused on your breath, Adam. It's more like, I've been thinking about video games for the last 8 minutes. So I meditate, I write for an hour to an hour and a half, and then I go and exercise. I work out. Hey, Sachko. And what that looks like these days is I ride, we've got a Peloton now, which I think is amazing and I'm really enjoying. So I usually do a class that's about 30 minutes or like a 20-minute class, a 10-minute cool down, and then 5 minutes of stretching. And then I go do some resistance training. I lift some weights, and then shower, eat breakfast, and then I'm sort of at my desk at about 8:30. Why am I telling you all this? Because once I sit down at my desk, I have a great deal of inertia about doing anything. I don't want to do work at this point in the morning. I want to read the news. This morning I was like, I'm just going to look up Donald Trump memes because I think the guy's a goofball, among other things. And so looking at memes of him will be funny for me. And my friends and I have a chat that's always ongoing through an app called Discord. And so I'm chatting with them and we're sharing podcasts we found valuable and stuff like that. And so what I would do left to my own accord, if I was just doing what was easy, is I would not acknowledge people. I would just do that. I would coast on that because that's pretty comfortable and easy for me. And then at 10 a.m. I'd go live and I'd start. And so I have to reach in. I have to choose from my commitment to actually pick up the phone, look up the person, find them on Facebook, feel into who they are, and then summon the courage to acknowledge them for however long I'm acknowledging them, usually about 5 minutes. So I have to generate all that. And in the morning, often first thing, I'm not necessarily heart open. I'm kind of like crabby because it's the morning. And so I need to like be in the act of opening my heart up, expanding, expressing, just opening myself spiritually, heartily, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so thank you, Mia. Thank you, Sachko, for saying hi. Everyone else, come on, get in here. I want to know who you are. It's way more fun for me. Make this fun for me. I'm going to make it fun for you. Aside from this part where I'm kind of shaming you into putting your name on the side here. We'll get past that. So, yeah, it requires a degree. Hey, Lori, thanks for being here. It requires a degree of generating for me to create that acknowledgement. And oh yeah, how did I get on this topic? This is how I got on this topic. Hey, Stuart, nice to have you here. Um, what'll happen sometimes is I record the acknowledgement and then I'll like turn my phone and it goes into landscape mode. And then I'm using the Facebook app to send these out because that's where I'm connected with people. And what happens is the app kind of, I guess, says to itself, oh, Adam's shifted into landscape mode. The only explanation here is that he wants to erase this message. And so it's a little bit like when you write a nice long email to someone and it gets deleted and you're like, now I got to generate all of that again. It was hard enough the first time. Now I got to do it the second time. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Oh, nice, Stuart. I love that. Got the sides all shaved up. We just reshaved this yesterday because tomorrow I have a photo shoot, and then I'm going to be in the process of growing it out. I want to keep my hair long, but I want to see how it looks sans shaved sides. It's shaved on both sides, as you can tell. And that's going to be a really annoying, lengthy process. So that's what it's going to look like next. Okay, well, let's see. Lots of stuff going on in the world. The most recent friend of mine, my friend Davin, shared this morning the most recent Brene Brown podcast, which is Unlocking, I think it's called Unlocking Us. I don't subscribe to it. I don't listen to it regularly, not because it's not great, just I have enough of that kind of content. But anyhow, she was talking about this idea of like what's going on in the States and what we really require for unity, and that is accountability, but accountability free of shaming people. And so I think that there's just a really potent um, distinction between those two. So the shaming people part is where we want to make someone wrong for what they've done. We want to punish them. We want to energetically hold them as wrong, and we heap all of our judgment onto them for how wrong they are. Whereas holding someone accountable is finding the way in our hearts, and this requires work to like get back to loving them, to like holding them, not you're not a garbage human being, or you're not like, how can I get myself to a place where I'm equanimous, where I can hold you with love and relate to you a little bit like I would relate to, this is a stand, not truth, but like the way I would relate to a child that bumped into me and hurt me and caused me to drop a glass and break it. I get annoyed with the child, but then I work myself out so I can find my way back to loving them and then holding them. And yet at the same time, we have to hold someone accountable through that. So we have to work ourselves out first before we can really hold someone accountable. And that's the challenge because we've got judgment and shame and they're wrong wrapped up in holding them accountable. So it's a great podcast. Brene Brown, Unlocking Us. Really recommend you check it out if you kind of vibe on the content that I talk about here, that I post, that's on Get Lit, that podcast, which you should totally be listening to if you're not. That one I definitely subscribe to. So yeah, that was a good start, that podcast. I really liked it. Anything else I want to talk about before I sort of dive into our rad topics? I don't think so. I'm going to give a quick update on this guy, this book right here, which is that I've now, this is the alpha edition, as you've probably heard. So this is a shorter version. It's fairly substantial, but the vision I've had for this book, and my friend Wes Kennedy gave me this vision where he was sharing, I'd shared some of this with him, and he was like, man, I can't wait to have like a hard copy cover of your book on my desk that I can reference. I was like, oh, thanks for that vision of that book sitting on someone's desk and they can flip through it and be like, oh, what's the deal? So the vision I have is it's about this size, but like a much, almost like, twice the width, like a square version. And what I'd love to have is a beautiful hard copy, hard cover for it, and even like a ribbon that you can kind of pull through to mark a page, whatever you're working on with a particular client or something along those lines. I don't know how possible that is with like today's self-publishing and Amazon and all of that stuff because I don't have a publisher and I don't work through a publisher. But nevertheless, I'm excited about that. I've written all the extended parts, I've edited all of it, and now I'm writing a few more kind of pieces that are like connective tissue. And so some of what that entails is like some sections on distinguishing responsibility from blame, kind of, which is similar to what Brene Brown was talking about, or practices for like, how do I actually get responsibility, or how do I get present to my impact? And once I'm present to my impact, how do I clean up the mess that I may have made? How do I do that stuff? You talk a lot about it in these sections on magic or sections on adventure or whatever, but how do we do that? And so what I'm including in this book is a lot of here's how to practice some of the more common stuff. What does it mean for me to be with something as opposed to suppressing it or wallowing in it? Have you guys ever wondered that? Like often when I invite someone to be with their anger or something like that, the the fear is, well, I'm going to do then is spend all my life being angry. And that can be what if we've spent a lifetime suppressing something, then when we finally start to allow ourselves to feel it, we can it's almost like we create ourselves a perpetual motion machine. We spin up into our anger and then our anger gets us more angry and then we never actually resolve anything. And so we've got sections in there, but like, how do you actually transcend that binary set of choices to create this opportunity to be with and thus resolve something? So all that's coming together. Most of it's written. I've been sharing bits and bobs of that as I write it, and it's cool to see it all come together. It's really neat. I'm really excited to Too Smart to Know Better was a book I'd been writing for a couple of years and then languished in the publishing process. And so when it finally got published, I didn't really share very much about it. You can find it online on Amazon if you search for my name. My collar's doing something weird here. But I'd kind of moved past it. It felt sort of like my work from 3 years ago. And so I wasn't super stoked about it. Whereas the Spectrums of Being, I'm really pumped about. I'm really excited to put this into the world. And I think it's going to really the vision I have for it is it becomes a seminal piece on the art of transformative coaching and transformative leadership. How do we really work with that? So that's the vision I have. You'll definitely find out and hear probably a ton about it when it actually happens. Soon to come. I don't have a date yet because there's still, sections that I'm writing, but we're getting closer and closer every day. Okay. Well, that's enough of an update. Let's go to the live topics here. So y'all gave me some awesome topics. The way this works is that I ask for topics usually Friday morning. People share, this is what I'd love to hear about. And then I do my best not to prepare any kind of answer because I think that the best value I can provide is from my being. Thanks. How do I say your name? Is it Rawia? I want to say Rawia, but I'm not sure. But thank you. I appreciate that, Rawia. Let me know. Put it in the comments so I get it right. Stuart, that's a great idea. Yeah, I've not even thought about that. Thank you for that suggestion. I'm going to make good on that. I think that's a really brilliant idea. I'm going to turn this fan on, give you a shot of my vest, which I had custom made because I wanted a double-breasted vest, double vested. So I post these topics. The reason I don't prepare anything is because I think the best value I can provide is a function of my being, which is to say like all the work I've done over here and then to speak from my fullest expression rather than speaking from a set of answers that I've put together already. And so it's kind of cool when I do podcasts or interviews with people or a presentation, the person I'm partnering with is often quite concerned. They got a lot of energy, like, okay, we've got to make it go this way, and here's and are you okay if I ask these questions? I'm like, yeah, let's just go. I was talking about this with my friend Michelle this morning, like, I'm all good with all of it because that's the nature of doing our work is that we can be with whatever shows up in the space. So if what's showing up in the space is that everyone seems bored and tired, I can be with that and I can address it rather than needing to pre-create and get everything perfect so that we never get to the point where anyone's bored. And what that does is it probably steps over the transformational opportunity to address how someone shows up in a particular presentation. We have people in the Forge right now that are some of them are like, I don't feel like I'm getting my value, or this is a little boring, or I want this to go different. And while we certainly take responsibility on our side for that, and we really take a look over here, it's important that they be there because that allows us to coach and address the way that they've learned to show up. And if they're showing up, finding they're not getting their value here and finding that they're bored here, that same energy is happening elsewhere in their life. That's the way transformation works. How you be over here is how you be over there. So anyhow, let's see, what do we have that I feel called to talk about? I think I want to start with fighting for our limitations and how to support someone here. So let's talk first about this idea of fighting for our limitations, because why would we do that? Obviously, I'm not going to do that. I'm not stupid. I listen to this guy in this vest talk about leadership. I listen to podcasts. I read books. I'm really committed to leadership. So there's no real reason why I would argue for my limitations, right? Like that just doesn't make sense. So the first thing that we have to understand here in this conversation is that we simultaneously subjectively hold the belief slash truth that we don't argue for our limitations. Simultaneous with that, we actively argue for our limitations. Both of those are true. So we have this belief, and in fact, our belief is borne out by what we perceive, that I'm not arguing for my limitations, I'm all about possibility. And at the same time that we hold and see the truth of that belief, what we are doing is arguing for our limitations. That paradox is the way that the ego or the shadow holds us in check. That's how that works, is that we cannot see our blind spot. If it was as easy as being like, oh, there's my blind spot, I would have no job. This whole conversation would be boring. It'd be super obvious, and knowing would be sufficient. But that's not the way a blind spot works. If only that was how a blind spot works. If only it was that easy. But it's not. The way our blind spots work is that we actively dismiss the possibility that they are our blind spots. And we do things like we when we get a piece of feedback that would land in the blind spot, that would like pull our blind spot here, that would point out to something that is in our blind spot, we do things like we say, well, do I agree with this or do I disagree with this? So I might say to someone like, hey, I notice the way you occur is really unhappy. And if their unhappiness, I'm going to draw this out a little bit more. So let's assume their unhappiness lies in their blind spot. And the way this is fabricated is this person has a staunchly held belief that they are someone who is happy. So their self-identity is wrapped up in this idea that they are joyous. They are a very happy person. And so their personal identity is vested in the notion that they are happy. And consequently, they have no capacity to even be with the possibility that they might be occurring or actually are unhappy. This happened recently on a conversation I was in with someone. And so when I reflect, how you occur is quite unhappy. There's a number of things that happen. So one of them is they just go, well, do I agree with Adam or do I disagree with Adam? And that is a very dangerous inquiry. Hey, Alexandra, a very dangerous inquiry to get a very dangerous and slippery inquiry to get into from the perspective of transformation. Because what you will agree with is what you already know, what you already hold to be true, which is also what lies not in your blind spots. And what you're going to disagree with is all the stuff in your blind spots because you don't currently have the space for it to be true. It's in your blind spot. And so the question, the inquiry we get into with ourselves of, do I agree with this or do I disagree with this, actually just keeps us in the safety of the world as we know it. It stops us from being able to see our blind spots. So that's the first place this person got, is like, well, I don't really agree with that. And then they gave me a list of explanations for why they didn't agree with it. The second thing that people can do, or at least in this instance that happened, was the person explained, well, I think, the reason you see that is because here I'm talking about the stuff that I'm not happy about, but everywhere else in my life, blah, blah, blah. So now what's happening is they're kind of creating exceptions or silos. Oh, well, here, the reason you see that what you're reflecting is not true, it's true in this moment. You can see it here in this moment, but the rest of the time it's not true. So this is kind of like carving out a special exception for your blind spot rather than just receiving the reflection. And as you can imagine, this is a hard thing for this person to receive. So it's not like they're stupid or they're dumb or they should have known better. This is not about making them wrong in any way for how they showed up. the intention here is more to show you how slippery our blind spot is, to show you how challenging it is for us to really come to terms with that thing that's being reflected to us. And so this is how we end up arguing for our limitations. So we start, you can't even see your limitations. And in fact, all of the inquiries that you get into, all of what occurs sort of like rational discourse, or like, well, no, I'm in a conversation with Adam, is actually you pulling yourself back into the safety of what you already know to be true. The funniest place this happens is a bit of a digression, and I'm going to come back. The funniest place this happens is sometimes when I get into a conversation with someone, a new person, we'll have a complimentary session, and I'm like, so what do you want? They're like, I want to see my blind spots. I want to learn something about myself that I don't know. Which, first of all, is not a particularly great coaching request. It's fine. It's just sort of like getting into the car and then trying to figure out your blind spots. The best way to do that is to drive somewhere. And then you're going to find what's in your blind spots when, as we go. Trying to figure them out beforehand is like, I understand the impulse. It's not wrong for the impulse. It's just, it's kind of, it's really a half measure. You're getting a booby prize if you're doing that. So a much more powerful place is like, where do you want to go in your life? And let's trust we're going to see the blind spots as we go there. Anyhow, as people show up in these conversations, they say, I really want to see and find something about myself that I don't know. And then immediately start to argue with me when I reflect the thing that's in their blind spot to them. So they're clear that they want this. They've even declared, this is what I want to leave with. I want to discover what I don't know. And the challenge is that we don't realize how resistant we are to seeing what we don't know. We can't understand that until we're in it. And then once we're in it, it's really hard to get the altitude to see it. So, Alexandra, mine too. Like I can see this agree, disagree dynamic because holy crap, that's like my jam, right? Brilliant guy, super smart. And so I've got the world figured out. That's what my ego will tell me. And then if you were to say like, well, I think you might look at this, I really have to be on guard for that part of me that wants to just dismiss out hand what someone's telling me or collapse into it. That's the other part of it. It's just like, you're right, I will go along with you. That's not actually the game either. Hey, Andrea, nice to have you with us. Hope you're having a great week. So, we're resistant to seeing our blind spots. It doesn't occur like resistance. It just occurs like truth to us, or even like we're being reasonable, but the person over there is just, yeah, I see what you're trying to say, Adam, but whatever that version is. So the way this works in terms of like arguing for our limitations, then we're going to talk about that, and then I'm going to talk, how do you support someone doing this? So all of us argue for our limitations, and the way that works is it's kind of like we take what we just talked about and then we extend it a little bit further. So someone who, let's take a lawyer as an example. So in the world of many attorneys, this isn't really specific to attorneys. I'm just going to use my past career as an example, but like there's lots of careers where this is the case. The world is set up where they don't have any time. There's never enough time. If only I could get more time. What's the solution to that problem of if only I could get more time? Better time management, delegating more, all of these things. And so the thing is that there is a possibility available of this person having more time. What would you do with more time? What would you like? What would that make available to you? Blah, blah, blah. So first we want to get them present to what they would do with more time. And then the next step is, got it. Okay. So what do you think's in the way? How could you create some more time? And what people start to do at this point is, rather than step beyond the realm of what they know, of what they already hold to be true, they get into a conversation that is, here's why I can't do that. Look, Adam, I get it. I'd love to delegate more. But the truth is that people around me just can't be trusted. And therefore, da 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 da. And therefore, I have to do this. So help me find another way. And it's not to suggest that there's not some truth to what they're talking about, because from our beliefs, we act a certain way. From the way we act, we create a world around us that's a reflection of that. And then the world around us reflects it reinforces our beliefs. It creates truth in our beliefs. They're no longer just a belief, they're a truth. And so they look there and they're like, here's the truth. Hey, Jamie, nice to have you with us. I appreciate that. You're brilliant as well. I see you and your brilliance, as well as your passion. I love your geek gene. So, so it's not to suggest that they're wrong or that it's just fabricated or made up, that they can't delegate because they can't trust people. There's some truth in that. The point here is that you can sort of go through the litany of things and be like, okay, what about this? If you're not yet fully coaching at a level where you can fully embody the presence and being of coach, and instead are still doing a lot more consulting, you'll probably notice this with your people and find it frustrating. You'll try to help them solve their problems, but you'll notice that every step along the way, God damn it, they've got an excuse or an explanation for why that particular solution will not work. And so it just perpetuates. It's always there. So you'll be like, okay, well, what about we could, let's say we're trying to solve or help that lawyer solve their problem. Okay, well, what about delegating more? Well, I can't. I gotta try. Okay, great. Okay, so what about if you started to take like just 15-minute breaks? Well, I couldn't do that because the thing is that court's always in session and I need to blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, what about if you just said no to more files? Well, I could do that, Adam, but then I'd have to hire some. You get the idea, right? It's never ending. And so what this is the person has created the world around them that reinforces the way they're being in it. So a person that's an attorney with a scarcity of time, they've created a world around them that reinforces that time scarcity and rewards them on some level for it. So there's a way that attorney has to be from their scarcity of time, like super productive, super efficient, super busy, sacrificing their family life, but getting a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And that world also rewards them for the strategies they're doing from that time scarcity. So this is a completely contained world. You could think of it like a bird trapped in a beautiful atrium. There's lots of stuff for it to do, and it can fly around and nest in trees and eat fruit off of them, but it's still limited on some level. And so people want to leave. They want out, but then as soon as you try to support them being out, removing that, they argue for the limitations that hold them in check. In effect, I call that at effect, Jamie. But yeah, the same idea, right? It's all I'm at what I can create is at the effect of my circumstances, the world around me, et cetera, et cetera. Contrasted with being at cause to create what you want to create, regardless of your circumstances, which is the work of leader, to continually step further and further into being more at cause in their lives. Hey, Maria, welcome. Nice to have you with us. So what happens, where we end up, is that everyone, all of us, will argue for our limitations on some level. The alternative to arguing for our limitations is kind of like resignation. So that would be like the lawyer saying, okay, look, it's not going to work because I can't delegate because blah, 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 but you're telling me I just got to do it. So fuck it. I'll just do it. I'm just going to delegate and just hope, I'm going to trust spirit that it's going to work, which it will not, because in trusting it's going to work, they're still operating inside the same world. And so in this instance, they're going to concede, they're going to flop down, they're going to resign themselves to what you're trying to push onto them. But we already know the way the world works inside this bubble for them. So they're going to be kind of, in a way, willing to try something new out, but they're actually set up to prove why it doesn't work. So in this instance now, the other side of this, it's not that they're just arguing for their limitations, they're actually going to go ahead and prove them. So all of your effort as coach, as leader, to like get them out of this, to force them to do something different, to support them, to change them, is actually going to reinforce the problem. This is why consulting so often fails. It's not to suggest that I'm just going to mess up all my words. It's not to suggest that consulting doesn't have value. But when what someone is aiming to create is a breakthrough, rather than learning something new or optimizing a process, but rather when the result they want is really a breakthrough, consulting will actually it'll further entrench them in the bubble that they're caught in. So if arguing for our limitations, or what's the word I used? Proving our limitations. So now we're going to shift to, great, well, what do we do? Because it sounds like this person or me is fucked. So how do we manage this? We'll talk about that. Jamie says, I'm going to get 20 new friend. Oh, sweet. 20 new friend requests. That's awesome, Jamie. I would love to connect with those people. And if there's anything I can provide or support you with in that, if you want to do a session or something like that, let me know. I'd love to support you and those people. Hey, Tim. Hello, Timothée of the hair. Stuart, I love that you're aware of this. Can you elaborate? I'd love to just hear like sort of more of how do you notice this showing up for yourself, or where are you finding this? Like, how is this in particular manifesting for you? And Mia, yeah, like my comment the other day that I've accepted people's view of me as being hard on myself, even though I don't see it. So this is the booby prize, accepting something even though we don't fully get it internally. The other side of this is like intellectually knowing something, but not actually fully getting it. And so the way that works is we'd be like, yeah, okay, I can understand what Adam's saying, so I'm just going to trust it. You don't have to trust it. What you have to do is try it on so you can prove to yourself the truth of this thing. But before we can actually try it on and test it like a scientific hypothesis, or like trying on a coat at a store and seeing how it fits, we have to be willing to step past our already decided upon truth that this is wrong. So we either, this is wrong, or fuck it, I'm just going to go ahead and accept it as right. And neither of those will create the breakthrough. So this is going to take us to, how do we support someone with this? So what often happens, first of all, our job as coach or leader, regardless, when we're supporting anyone to deepen their leadership, to step further into their fullest expression and who they are as human, is not to fix any of this for them. That, first of all, that piece I just said there, your job is not to fix any of this for them, is part of what makes coaching one of the most challenging occupations and professions. Because our human nature is a raging desire from love. It's from a good place, but our desire is to fix this for you. And the reason I want to fix it for you is because I want to fix it for me, because I don't like being stuck in it over here. And what I don't have an ability to sit in over here, I'm not going to have much capacity to allow you to sit in it, especially when I'm tying the value and the money you're paying me into you moving off of your stuff. And so what you get is a lot of coaches that move into consulting mode. They try to fix this stuff for people and it doesn't work. So our job as coaches not to fix any of this. Hey, Emmy. Yes, Emmy, I'm going to come back to that. It's a great point. Our job is to reflect this to the client. And so the way that works is when the client starts to say things like, well, here's why I can't, blah, 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 blah. Our job is to kind of be like, see, notice the world you have set up is like this perfect bubble, and there's no space for this to be any different. And they're going to go, yeah, well, here's why it can't be any different. And then our job as coach or leader is to say, exactly, see, you're doing it right now. And this will be very infuriating for them, because it often feels a little bit like if you have seen The Lion King from, I don't know, 30 years ago, maybe, the animated Disney movie, there's a character called Rafiki, who is a shaman, or he embodies the archetype, I would say, of the shaman. And as he's bringing his wisdom to Simba and helping Simba grow into his role as the Lion King, he's doing a lot of like slapping Simba upside the head. And Simba's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And he's like, what does it matter? It's in the past. And it's really obnoxious to Simba because Simba can't yet see what Rafiki is inviting him into. And so as coach, it can often leave people feeling a little bit like we're flicking them in the air. We're poking them. Or if you were in a boxing training, boxers are taught you got to keep your fists up. And as you punch, you bring your shoulder up to protect the side of your face that's now exposed, and you keep the other fist right here. That's good punching technique. And so when someone is learning to box, they do this. They punch like that. And so sometimes what a trainer will do is say, punch me. And the person will go to punch them, and then they'll get a jab right in the face very quickly. And they'll be like, don't do that. And the trainer says, punch me. And they go to do it and they slap him in the side of the head. Punch me, slap. And so where the person who's being trained is left is like, fuck you. You're telling me to punch you and you're slapping me. And it feels that way. But what's actually happening is that the trainer is they're holding the space for this person to see the limitations of what they're doing. And so this is what we're doing as coaches, as leaders. What we're doing is helping people actually start to see the limitations they are creating. And so what our job is to do is not to help them escape this bubble. Our job is to point to how they keep putting themselves into the bubble and how they keep holding themselves in the bubble. And the ways you can hold yourself in the bubble are myriad, but some of them, as bears on this conversation, are insisting on why you can't achieve something, like stopping in trying to achieve something because of all of the reasons that exist in the bubble. Refusing to even consider a possibility outside of the bubble. Asking yourself questions like, do I agree with this reflection or do I not agree with this reflection? These are all ways that we hold ourselves in the bubble. Another way is trying to figure out, given these limitations, given that I can't trust anyone and can't delegate to everyone, and given that I can never take even a 15-minute break, what's the optimal way that I can exist inside of this structure? And then enacting solutions like that in our lives. All of what that does is it reinforces and holds us in the bubble of our own limitations. So the bottom line for all of this, and I'm going to read your guys' generous comments here. The bottom line for all of this is the first thing you do to help people with this is you stop needing them to be anywhere different. That's your own work. You are going to get clients that are a reflection of you and your own work. And your clients, where they get stuck, is going to be a function of where you get stuck in your life. So you got to first own that it's driving you nuts and you want them to be somewhere else. Bring that to your coach and share that with your coach, and then get supported by your coach to be in the insanity of seeing how you're doing the same thing. And as you develop the ability to sit in all of this, that then provides the opportunity for you to hold space while your client sits with this and not need them to be anywhere different. And that requires a lot of courage, because for a while, what's going to be happening is your client's going to slowly start to see how bankrupt this bubble is. At first, they're going to be like, I have to do it this way. You're going to go, okay, great. Try it out this week. Let me know how it goes. And they're going to come back and they're going to, it's not working. It sucks. And slowly but surely, they're going to come to this point where they're like, okay, great, coach, this thing isn't working. I can see that now, but what's the solution? You're not giving me an answer. And that's the point where they start to turn on you as coach or leader. They start to be like, if you were really doing your job, I would be getting out of, I would see a path out of this. And that requires a really, that requires a lot of our own work to be willing to stand for the client in that place and not try to fix it. The rest of the world outside of leading, outside of coaching, lean into that and go, inadvertently, unconsciously, but we fix it. We fucking fix it, because we don't want them to fire us. We don't want blah, blah, blah. This is why having a commitment up front with your client is so powerful. And I'm going to read you a line from my agreement with my clients so that you can hear kind of how I set this up with them. Got to bring this up. I love you, Alexandra. I love that you're here. I love that you're here in spite of that. I'm sorry that this is less relaxing than intended. But how cool is it that you're here on a Friday night? Like, I really acknowledge you for your commitment to your craft, that you're in this conversation on a Friday night. So I'm going to read this piece from my agreement that I go through with my clients, and then I'm going to come to the comments, and I think we'll start to move on, unless you guys have questions about any of this. And if you do, please put them over there. It's so helpful to me. So there's two pieces. The way I go through my agreements is, the first thing that happens is the client pays their invoice. That is the commitment actually happening. That's the first part of it. Then we put dates on the calendar. We do a ton of work before they ever get an invoice or pay one. Usually with me, there's like 5-6 conversations before there's any money that's exchanged, because they and I are playing with a lot of commitment. So I want to make sure we're both really grounded in that commitment. We're really truly a yes. Then we get on a phone and I go through the agreements with them verbally. So I never send paperwork. They get this after the fact, but I don't want to send them paperwork before. That's a bummer and it's scary. And I want to create a powerful experience for them as we go through these. So the two parts I'm going to read to you. The first is commitment. And this agreement is you understand and agree to the fact that transformation requires commitment. Absent your commitment, fear will predictably take over and have you pull away from that which is confronting. Commitment is the fuel that will keep you moving through the breakdown to the breakthrough on the other side. With this understanding, you agree that this agreement has no refunds. If we have agreed to a monthly payment plan, you understand that this is not to be construed as paying for coaching by the month. You understand and agree that you are paying for the entire coaching package listed above. If you quit early, you still agree to complete your payment in service of honoring your commitment. Here's the secret for that part. I'm not going to go after anyone. Not a single one of my clients will ever get a legal note from me saying you are being sued or sent to collections or anything like that. This commitment is worded the way it is and given to the client so that they can choose into this agreement powerfully. The client always has power. They can always break their promises and their commitments. I'm not interested in punishing them for doing so. I will point back to this. I will invite them back into the power that their commitment creates for themselves. But I'm not going to chase them, and that's not what this is about. So that's the first part. The second part, aligned with this, is this. Quitting is the title. Our fear is a powerful force, and in creating the breakthroughs and transformation you're here for, we will inevitably run up against your fear. In fact, I'm going to move this down here so I can, there we go, that's a bit better. Where was I? Oh, yes. In fact, most of coaching is operating in the face of fear. The way that fear wins is by having you leave coaching. There are a vast number of ways that fear can get us out of the crucible that is coaching. Some of those ways are trying to perform and do everything perfectly, suffering through the coaching, resigned to finishing our time together but without generating yourself, quitting early, ghosting and not showing up to our calls, showing up to our calls distracted or under the influence of substances, wanting to take a temporary break from coaching, and many others. You will feel great relief in the moment when you choose out of coaching. This is because coaching is a structure intended to support you in leaning into your fear, and that is by definition scary. Not only will the above approaches to quitting feel good and relieve the pressure caused by your fear, they will occur to you as incredibly reasonable and like common sense in the moment. You understand and agree that we will predictably run into some flavor of quitting, and that our job together is to support you in staying inside the commitment and container we have created for the coaching as laid out by these agreements. I'm happy to send that agreement to anyone that wants it. If you're like, hey, can I see that agreement? I'm more than happy. You just have to let me know, send a message or an email to me so that I know to provide them to you. Not just a comment here, because I don't have the ability to keep track of this very well. So I set that up so that when we are standing for someone to come out of their limitations, and when I'm not giving them the answer that they are craving and want from me, we both know and have agreed ahead of time that I'm going to stand here for them to come out of their bubble and to create something new. And in order for them to do that, they first have to be with the bankruptcy of the existing bubble. That's like knocking down the walls of your condo. Suddenly a thunderstorm comes and you're like, fuck, I need to rebuild the condo really quickly. And instead, what they're choosing courageously to do is I'm going to sit in this thunderstorm. I'm going to learn how to be okay with it so that I can eventually create the mansion. Okay, let's read what you guys wrote here. Stu, you're saying manifesting you in staying in a living environment that I was convinced was serving me while also caught in feeling like I had no choice in getting my own space or choosing a path that most serves me. Beautiful, man. I so love that. That requires some real courage. Same with an old 2012 work laptop. I just upgraded it. No excuses. Same with the hair. Honestly, I always have a choice. I love that. There's such power in making decisions like this. Beautiful work. Andrea, stop with the musical references. Great. I will give you lots of musical theater references. Stuart, thanks for being with us. Jamie, thank you. Maria, you thought you were a straight shooter. Yeah, me too. John Wilson, thanks for being here, man. Hola. Uh, Jamie, Evan, yeah, please just send me a message, all of you, so that I can make sure I provide it. It's not that I want to offload your work. It's more that I want to honor the desire. And when you send me a message, that goes into an inbox, and that's how I. People are often like, "How do you stay on top of stuff?" One is by holding firm that the requests for something from me come into a medium that I can actually reliably track. Otherwise, I go crazy. Oh, thanks, Jamie. That I'm touched to hear that. That would be a fun partnership. I'd love that. Okay. Let's see. That is there. Let's talk about another subject here. So it doesn't look like the main, no questions. Andrea, keep the musical theater references coming. Roger that. Make sure that we can get in here. Um, so the next thing I'll talk about is connecting beyond our ecosystem and the integrating a sales funnel versus like an authentic connection. This is Evan and Sachko, and quite a few people asked about this. So let us see. I want to start by saying, well, kind of like a few things. One is I don't know how I've arrived here in a manner of speaking. You know, it's not, there's been lots of breakthroughs I've had to create to have the degree of reach and audience that I do, which is modest at best, but more than nothing. You know, so there's like 1,500 people that follow me, 5,000 or so people have added me as a friend. So there's like people in my orbit, people connected with me. And for the most part, I notice who I be now is a clearing for results to show up into, as opposed to going out to try to make stuff happen. And then at the same time, I actively seek out new spaces to step into so that I can meet new people and create new connections and blah, blah, blah. The reason I'm sharing all this is, I guess, to own that I don't have an easy answer to this. I don't know off the top, oh, here's the blah, blah, blah. Here's how you do that, you know, or any of that. So more, I kind of want to own, I'm distinguishing this as we go. Yeah, do you think, Alexander, could it be the effect of commitment and dedication? And certainly, I think that's part of it. I think that's absolutely part of it is a real, you know, I'm very committed. I've got to practice. And so here's a couple of my thoughts on this. The first thought is that the single absolute best thing that a coach can do in their life is invest in their own coach or some kind of leader that is ongoing, that is consistent. So not like a Tony Robbins one-off event, but like a regularly scheduled, ongoing, consistent, committed coaching relationship. And the reason for that is because that will call us forward into our own work, and it stops us from a lot of the ways we can escape our own work. Like if I go to a big event every quarter, it's not that that's not going to provide value, but I'm going to have a spike, and then I'm naturally, from the lack of support, going to revert back into the shape that suits the world I've created around me. Right? You show up as a particular energetic shape, and then you create a world around you that matches that shape. And then you go to this event and you're like, oh my God, you'll be this one. You go to this event, you're like, oh my God, I could be like this, energetically speaking. And you come, and then slowly but surely, your interaction with your world around you, absent other support, brings you back here. And you go to the event, you're like, now I'll be this shape. And so that's what tends to happen absent the consistent work. The reason this serves us as coaches and leaders is because the more we do our work, the more we get to be the shape that is most naturally and authentically and fully expressed as ourselves. And the more we get to be at cause for that in the face of a world that's doing its own thing. And the less we require from the world around us to shape itself differently. So we get to show up and be ourselves and be fully expressed and to be fully seen exactly as we are and exactly as we aren't, including all of the stuff that we feel shameful about, including all of the stuff that we feel is not regarded highly enough. So like the shameful stuff I want to keep hidden, and that other stuff I just mentioned is the stuff that I'm like, fuck you, you should see more of my brilliance. I'm going to use bigger words, that sort of version. And so, as coaches and leaders, as we do our own work, that stuff becomes less and less present. We have less and less of a veneer on who we are, and we can show up in the world fully expressed with the full access of depth of being that we are for the world. And that's magnetic. Anytime you're around someone like that, you have an experience that is unique. It cuts through the noise of the world around us. The world around us is the world of, by and large, our shadows. It's the world of comfort. It's the world of doing what we know to do to be accepted, loved, received, and valued, as opposed to the world where we trust. We make the scary choice to trust that who I am is enough. And then I'm going to invest in myself, which is scary in itself, and blah, 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 all of that sort of stuff. And so, first and foremost, if you're doing that work, it won't magically make you have clients. It won't magically make you wealthy. But what it will do is it creates this foundation that is um, greater than anything else you can do. Because every time someone comes into contact with you, the experience they have is like, why is this person different? What is it about this person that I'm so drawn to? Authentic, fully expressed being is magnetic. We can't even explain it. We often just feel our draw to it. We're like, I want to be around this person. One of my teachers once said, John Wineland, who Evan in the comments has also done work with, and I think some other people here, he said, a funny thing will happen as you do more of this work is that people want to be in relationship with you. People will pay money to be with you. And Evan, who's going through the Forge, one of the things when he and I were in conversation was he said, and Evan, you'll have to let me know if there's anything to clean up. I don't think that this would be any issue me sharing this, but he said, like, Adam, I kind of just want to get around you. I want to be in relationship with you. So this is the foundational piece. This is why I'm always harping in service of all of us. We got to do our own work. We actually don't have to, but like that builds the foundation on which we can layer everything else. You can do funnels, you can do marketing, you can do networking events, you can do all that stuff. But when we're doing all that without building this foundation of our own being, it's set on top of a rickety foundation, and it's only going to get you so far. Now, having said all of that, I will take a sip of tea. I didn't know that's what I was going to do at first, then I realized I wanted a sip of tea, and now I'm going to, yeah. So having said all of that, now we're in the question, which is like, okay, got it, do my own work. The people around me will maybe start to see me differently, maybe they won't, but all of us have like a degree of sort of, here's the ecosystem that I have created. These are the people around which I'm known. These are the people that know me. And then I can kind of like incrementally expand that, right? Like I can create friendships with my friends' friends and so on and so forth. But by and large, there's that, I can't remember his name, but that number that's sort of like the number of relationships we can hold at any one time is 150, sort of the tribal number. And so how do we get past our tribe? How do we grow beyond the current ecosystem in which we are in? I don't know if I have a good answer to this. I only know what has sort of worked for me. So this is like a thing in progress for me too. The things that I've found worked for me, or the way it seems to look for me, is that first I have to look beyond where I'm currently looking. And so the first time this really happened was I went to a Rich Litvin event, who is one of the authors of The Prosperous Coach, which is a brilliant book. I highly recommend you read the book. And then I would recommend you work with Steve Chandler if you're called to work with one of those two people. Well, that's not totally fair. Rich has plenty of value to offer, but I think anyhow, I don't really want to go down that path. So I went to this event, and he introduced this new thing, which was a program he put on called 4PC, where the cost to entry was like 20K US, and it was a year, and blah blah blah. You're going to travel. It was madness to do it, and we didn't have the most empowering experience at the event we were at. But what I noticed was that the people going to this event, the people that were drawn to this 4PC thing, were playing a bigger game than I was. They were coaches charging rates much higher than I was. They didn't necessarily occur like they had more access to their being. I felt like I think the training that I've been gone through and that I've been leading for the last few years is deeper than what most of these people are doing. But that doesn't really matter because on in other areas of their lives, areas I want to grow in, they're operating at a totally different dimension than the one I am. They're playing 4D chess. And so I enrolled myself and Bay in paying this money, like saying yes to this crazy investment. And what that did is it put me into the space where I was surrounded by other people making that same kind of investment. So that's really an important distinction because um, have you ever been around those people that, or maybe you've been one of these people where you listen to like a podcast and they're like, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so you're like, I'm going to create a group of the 5 people I want to spend the most time with that'll be really powerful and it'll be really cool. And what happens is we create that group, but it doesn't call us to be any different to be in that group. So we create that group in such a way that is comfortable inside our existing ecosystem. What that would look like in the context of what I've been talking about up to this point was if I created some kind of group called like 3PC or whatever, invited all those people into it, but didn't charge any money. Because then I could stay in the comfort of not making scary kind of investments like that myself. And then we'd be in this group and blah, blah, blah. And what I learned from saying yes into that group is that if I wanted to be around the kind of people for which a $20,000 US investment up front was not something that made them wet themselves, then I had to be willing to make that kind of investment myself. And so it's not all about money. The point here is more like we want to notice like what is it about the kind of people that you want to be getting engaged with? And then where do those people end up? And what do you have to do to join that, to be a part of it? Here's another example that totally did nothing. We got nothing out of this as far as I can remember. I think I met one person maybe. Was someone in that group was doing some work with like a charity organization and they were selling seats to this gala for some event. I can't remember this is how remarkable the gala was. I can't even remember what it was about. It was, a charity gala in service of something that was certainly a worthwhile cause. Maybe it was like, I don't know, what would it be? Women learning to read, or I don't know, something along those lines, right? So it's not that the cause was wrong. Anyhow, it's charity gala. And she invited us and she was like, Richard Branson's going to be there speaking. There's going to be a bunch of other celebrities, people that are paying, I think we paid $5,000 for our seats. And so what we did, again, didn't have money for this. We each bought a seat and we flew down to LA in the morning. We attended the gala at night. We went to bed and then we flew back here to Victoria the next day. Probably cost us somewhere around like $13,000 to do that. That was bonkers. No one thought that was a good idea. And if you were like, was it worth the money? The answer was no. In as much as I didn't get any connections from that, the gala was, Janelle Monáe sang at it, which was cool. But like for the most part, it was a lot of pomp and circumstance. It was the way I experienced it was like rich people hanging out, being rich people. Paris Hilton was there. Bay feels that Paris glared at Bay because I don't know why. Because the story someone shared with Bay and I think Bay, her experience is that she looks a little like Nicole Richie and they had a falling out. So anyhow, I don't know what it was. This stuff happened, but like it wasn't like I went to that and then I magically had this thing. But what it was doing was it was having me practice leaning out over the edge of my own comfort, financially speaking at this point, and the kind of people I was around, and saying yes to be around those people. That one didn't work. Other ones have made a difference. So Bay and I are often looking like, where are the groups? Where are people going? And one of the places that I've looked is like price tag matters. The places that I'm going to, usually like I'm going to events that have a cost of something like $5,000. Someone paying $5,000 does not mean that they are more advanced or that more this or more that. but it does mean that they are willing to make that kind of investment into something. And that tells us something about them. So I want to be really clear. The danger here is then people hear this and they're like, oh, got it. So what I have to do is be willing to pay a bunch more money. And that's not what we're talking about. It's more that you want to get clear, like, who are the people I'm up to? And then where are they? What are the sort of things they're doing? And you might have to experiment like I did with that gala. You know, I went to that gala and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go here and see. Maybe my people were there. I couldn't really connect. I didn't find that to be a good medium for connection. And actually, I'll share you super fucking weird thing happened. Two stories from that. The first was I went there with my late friend James Butler, who's also a coach and a very fearless man. He would do the crazy shit and just surged into it. It's part of his gift. And Richard Branson came and spoke, and then was leaving. And James had said, like, you know, Adam, a photo of me with James Butler or with Richard Branson, that's worth a lot of money. You know, that's instant credibility. And so we saw Richard leaving, and James and his girlfriend at the time, and Bay and I all went to try to see if we get an autograph or a photo, which he didn't want to do. Dude was like, he wasn't interested in that. But James went up to him with his girlfriend, and they took a photo. I followed along, and every step of the way, my stomach was churning, and I was like, ah, and then he got in his car and left. I didn't want to do it, and it didn't feel good to me, um, and I also did not muster the courage to step over my resistance to it at the same time. And if you put me back in that situation again, I would not force that anyhow, because that photo with Richard Branson will lead people to draw a conclusion, one that I may or may not lead them down, but it's not a true conclusion. It's not real. That photo op was not a real moment of connection at all. It was a moment of like forcing something to be created. That was the first story. That's the story about me. The second story is that I went to this event, and what happened was, as time went on, people get tired, and because it's a lot of performing and speaking, you're in a table with other people. You want to connect with them, but you can't because there's a thing happening. That's part of the thing that I find most awkward about these events, is that I'm here to connect with other human beings, but really there's a thing that I'm meant to pay attention to. And so I just have to sort of sit as a captive audience. And some of it's interesting and some of it I'm not that interested in. And I can listen from like it's a good cause, but that still doesn't make me interested. It's not what I would choose otherwise. And so as time goes on, people's ability to hold their attention here rather than to like connect with a human being and be in a conversation is waning. And what eventually happens with maybe like an hour left, people start to just talk. And this woman is on stage, and like she's an MC, I guess, but what she does is she starts calling people out. She starts getting mad at the people in the audience and like, you need to stop talking and blah, blah, blah. So fucking awkward. So weird. So anyhow, we went to that event. We sat in it. Oh, I should say, after she did that, everyone was like this, staring ahead. And then for the most part, people just left. That kind of like, okay, great. We're not allowed to talk. It's not that much fun to just keep staring. The performers are great, but it's not that much fun. I've had my fill. Goodbye. We're going to go. So we learned a lot from doing that. We learned like that's not the place our people are at. Some of the places where I found clients, the last one I'm going to share was I'd felt called towards ayahuasca and sitting in plant medicine ceremony of that type. And I went to an event, a place called Rhythmia, probably the most famous place to go. Definitely not, it's a different experience than what I would say is a deep medicine ceremony. I've sat in those with shaman as well. And that's, you're going through with like 90 people at Rhythmia, which no shaman, no matter how good they are, can hold the space for 90 people. So there's a lot more. You're doing your own work. There's people around, you're supported, you're held. It's not like you're just left in the jungle by yourself. It's very comfortable. It's just a different thing. But I felt called towards going there and showed up there. And I was like, this is where I want to be. And as you can imagine, if I'm going to this sort of place, of course, some of my people are going to go there too. So if you want to find the version of yourself that is leaning into a scary, bigger game, lean into a scary, bigger game yourself. And that is where you will find them. And if where you are currently in your ecosystem is kind of edgy, then great, keep practicing there because you're going to find people like yourself that are kind of edgy. Wherever you are is where your people will be. Okay, I'm going to hit maybe one, maybe two more topics here. Jess, I really love that. Noticing what are the types of people that I want to connect with, and a lot of it is us. The deeper we go into ourselves, the more artfully we can define our niche because our niche is us. The thing in the way of people really crafting a powerful niche is that they've not gone very deep into themselves. The shallowest version of niches, it's not that they're not narrow. You can make a really narrow niche that's still very shallow. Like I work with lawyers that are 31 to 32, are white and have long hair. That's a fucking specific niche, but it's shallow. What is it about this person that calls you forward? Oh, they got long hair. What a decision. Long hair is a crazy decision. Blah, blah, blah. No, that's a shallow niche. You're not deep into the soul of that human. You're talking about the stuff on the surface, their hair, their age, the thing they do as a career. And so those are the niches that a lot of people, especially in the coaching industry, end up working with because a lot of people, especially in the coaching industry, are not very deep in their work. And so we can only define our niche, which is to say we can only describe ourselves energetically to the extent we've gone deep into ourselves. And so the deeper you do your own work, the more you start to discover these parts about yourself where you can be like, man, who I am is brilliant, but who I know myself to be is like arrogant at times, and then terrified of being arrogant and working so hard to admit I don't know, even when I'm dying to say that I'm pretty sure I know the answer. And what do I do about this paradox? Oh, it was weird. My back just started hurting there. And what you do about that paradox is you rather than trying to resolve it, you realize that is the niche. That's a function of your people. Your people are out there in the world, brilliant as heck, struggling with this thing. And so then you can start to define your niche in those terms. Say like who my people are is fucking brilliant, but they tend to have a struggle. And if you're one of these people, you might struggle with this dichotomy between how brilliant you are and how you already know the answer, and might struggle with a bit of arrogance or even listening to people. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you're working so hard to listen to people through this voice in your head that's like, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, and not knowing how to resolve that. That starts to be a niche that speaks more into the heart of that person. Jess, you say you recently had a session where your coach suggested your ideal clients were people who are seemingly ahead of you in some ways. Cool. I like it. I'd be curious what ways you think those are. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I would say for me, like the way I hold this is that our ideal client is ourselves and are typically up for the kind of breakthrough that, see you, Maria, thanks for hanging out, up for the kind of breakthrough that we've just had or are fixing to have. And the beautiful thing about crafting a powerful niche is you start to get who the soul of that person is. And once you understand the soul of that person, along with the shadows, the stuff they've learned to do, all of that, then you can take it and you can move it forward or backwards along the timeline. So what I can tell you, for example, if I'm sticking with brilliance, there's a lot more to my people than mere brilliance. But if we were sticking to there, I could be like, okay, what do I feel compelled to do with this paradox? Well, before I was into any work, I was basically like, fuck this side. I'm just going to learn how to be okay with this side. So I was getting better and better and better at being right, having the right answer, finding how I could speak that answer to you in a way you couldn't ignore, and finding a way to be okay with the fact that some people would call me arrogant. And then I can start to be like, okay, that's where I was at 30. Now, if I ran that pattern for 20 years, what would probably be predictable? Well, I'd probably, at this point, no longer even be able to see when people are holding me as arrogant or feeling hurt. So I'm probably completely disconnected from them, but I'm probably masterful at arguing and making points. I'm probably rarely wrong, except during the times when I admit already that I'm wrong. So there's no like, I'm wrong, yeah. Is that how I say it? Yeah. Cool. I like it. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm at this point, 20 years down the road, I'm like, the only times I'm wrong are the times when I admit I'm wrong, which still lets me kind of be right in a way because I'm wrong, but on my terms. So I don't, that's not something I necessarily directly observe in someone or anything. It's something I can derive from really getting present to the heart of this person's soul. And that's the really powerful thing about a niche, because you can start to see like, oh, those are some of my ideal clients. They're 20 years down the road, and that's where they've found themselves. They're doing these amazing things. The being underneath is consistent throughout. And we can also go back. We can be like 10 years before where I was. What was that brilliance like? Well, 10 years ago, I was a little more concerned with like not hurting people, but at the same time trying to reconcile that with, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the heart of a powerful niche. This is what I believe really makes a difference. Anyhow, that's a digression for me. Let's talk about so many good things here. Mia asks about yes, Sachiko, to your question, you are your audience. And Sachiko, what I see you doing, if you guys don't follow Sachiko, you must. Her writing is beautiful. Sachiko and I have worked together. She's in the forge with us. She is a woman peeling back the layers. She's doing the work and writing beautifully about it. And so I really recommend you follow Sachiko. And Sachiko, what I see you doing is expressing more and more of yourself in your writing. And that's having people, like I see you are getting comments, people are sharing like, wow, this really resonated for me, et cetera, et cetera. And so then the next step for you, if you wanted to like be a little more proactive, would be to deepen the connection with those people. So you can do that a bunch of ways. But if they're like, I love this, it resonated so much, you can say like, oh, cool, what did you get from it? Or what was it that resonated for my own benefit? Or you can send them a message and be like, thank you so much for commenting on my post. It can be that simple. It's just taking it one step further. So that's all that we're practicing. You're just deepening, deepening, deepening. And we always want to push outside of our ecosystem, to Evan's point. Now I'm going to talk about a different thing. The different thing will be, does anyone have a preference from these things that I've got in the comments? Right at the top there, you can see like, all of the stuff we've got. We've talked about fighting for our limitations. We've talked about connecting beyond our ego ecosystem. Then we've got stuff that's left is like the ego's version of possibility, working with a gradient, pleasure, joy, and fun in leadership, and selling yourself versus being of service. Does anyone have man, I really want to, can you speak to this one? I'll give a moment, a little bit. You're welcome, Sachiko. My pleasure. Rich, can you be more specific about supporting your clients? Which of those things is it that I can, because I'd love to address that. I just want to make sure I'm hitting what you're looking for. And then just awesome. Yeah, you got it. What people are, how they're ahead of us. I've started to work with this idea. I'm going to talk about this and then I'll choose a topic based on what you guys share. This notion, and it's a dangerous one because as soon as we start to talk about this, the ego can grab it and use it like a weapon. Oh, got it. Working with a gradient. There's our physical age, and then there is our spiritual age. And our spiritual age is a function of like the work that we're doing. As soon as we start to create something like that, the ego will be like, I'm spiritually older than them. Hey, Andrew, which is a little bit like that all of the whack ass mess caused by like being hashtag woke. I'm woke, they're not woke. Guess what? You just made yourself unwoke. So it's always a bit dangerous, but there's in coaching, in a way, people may be physically older than you. And by that doesn't just mean they physically are older. It might mean they're also further advanced in their career, or they might be further advanced in X, Y, or Z, the stuff that tends to happen. They might have more money than you. They might have had more divorces or failed relationships. That's all a function of our physical age. When we're coaching and developing someone's leadership, what we're evolving is we're aging them spiritually. We're helping them do more internal work. And our job as coach is to be aging spiritually, which ironically tends to have us age slower physically. That's like one of the benefits. And so our clients might actually be further along the physical age line from us, but spiritually they might be quite young. A lot of, I often end up working with people that are sort of at the even though they've got businesses thriving and doing all this stuff, spiritually, they're about the age I was when I first started this work, around 30. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And so it's not a place to be arrogant from. It's more an opportunity. It's a distinction that I think allows us to get beyond this story that like, well, I need to have made a business and have done this and have done that and be successful and have had 3 exit. No, you don't. That's a function of the physical age, and it's not really the domain we're working in as coach, as leader. Okay. I'm going to hit what you've asked, Rich. I'm going to talk about the gradient piece, and I'm going to talk about what you said, Jess. Thank you both for putting that in there. Super helpful. So working with a gradient is a little bit, how do we get here? Challenging our clients versus meeting where they're at. So Andrew, this was kind of your question. Thank you for, as always, I always appreciate you sharing your thoughts, what you'd like to hear me talk on. So the part of our job as coach is to expand someone's capacity. This is the heart of the work. The heart of transformational work is expanding our capacity to be with more of what shows up in life. Or to make it even more succinct, growth and transformation is expanding our capacity to be with more. What people think of growth as often is like, oh, I hate being with people that just are Republican or that are Democrats, but I've found a way, I've structured my life so that I've removed those, I've blocked them on Facebook, I've not done this, I've not done that, and now I don't have those people, I've grown. That's contracting from life. That's shrinking away. What it's doing is limiting the amount of life that you have to be with. And as humans, life is a lot to be with. There's a lot. There's cruelty, there's banality, there's boredom, there's mundanity, there's excitement, there's fear, there's thrill, there's everything. It's abundant and infinite, and it's a lot to stay open to all of that. And so growth is developing our ability to be open and to allow in and to be with more of the abundance of life. You'll never get there, just to be clear. And you'll never close off completely, but you'll shrink and shrink and shrink. That's the way of aging physically. The way of aging spiritually is to open to more and more of life. So the part of this that springs back to kind of Andrew's question, like challenging our clients versus meeting them where they're at, is it's a little like going to a gym. When I first started going to a gym, I couldn't lift anything. My muscles were not accustomed to lifting, and I had not gone to the gym. And so I had no capacity to lift the weights. And so where that puts me is the first thing is any weight I lift other than 0, for the most part, is going to cause me to shake and feel stupid. And like, it's going to be a real struggle, and I'm going to break out sweating and all of that sort of stuff. If I lower my weight enough, I'm going to get to the point where that doesn't happen, and it's going to feel comfortable lifting the weight. So that's one thing we can do. This is a metaphor, to be clear. That's a great thing we can do. That's a way that we can feel kind of like, I can feel like, all right, I'm lifting weights, but I don't feel horrible. I don't feel destroyed by the end of this. This is good. I'm doing the thing I'm meant to do. I'm lifting my weights. And if I never increase my weights, what's going to happen is I'm going to get better and better at lifting them, but I'm not going to really develop at all. I'm not expanding my capacity to lift more weights. I'm not developing more muscle. All I'm doing is the same thing. So this is what most people do. This is how most work happens, is we say yes into something that's an edge, and then that's where we stay. Not consciously, it's just what happens. And we're like, oh yeah, no, look, I'm going to the gym. We defend our actions. We insist we're going to the gym. That gives our ego kind of a sense of like, you're doing the thing, good for you. Remember, our ego is not malicious or to be maligned. It's there to help us and keep us safe. And so we get stuck and trapped. And so that's a situation where we are no longer expanding beyond our capacity. A lot of coaches, not in their own work, are doing the same thing. They're like, I'm going to the gym, but they're just lifting the same weights they've always lifted. And then they'll come and support their clients to lift the same weights they've always lifted. And the reason we do this is, one, because we're not challenged ourselves. We can't see over there the breakdown, and we can't see it over here. We're just like, yeah, good for you. You're going to the gym. And the client's going to be like, I feel really empowered. I'm going to the gym. And we celebrate them and it's all fine and good. And nothing really changes. Now, I want to be clear that that doesn't mean that the client will not have a subjective experience that things are great. In fact, your clients have a vested interest in telling you and themselves that they're doing breakthrough work because they've paid you money. So your client's not always the best judge of like whether they're actually creating a breakthrough. And if you aren't doing your work, neither are you. So this is one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is that I go to the gym and I'm so like, I hate how puny and scrawny I am. I need to be jacked. I got to get swole. So I lift up the 100-pound weights and I try to lift them and I'm like, ah, and I do 1 rep and I'm like, whew, that was hard fucking work. I feel destroyed and I am. Now I'm going to go home. And in lifting that weight, I sacrifice my form. I sacrifice the number of reps. I don't really do very much and I risk damaging myself. So that's where we've got the gradient too high. I'm way out of my capacity. Another version of this would be like if someone wants to learn to leap over what's scary and they're in front of a puddle and it's a little scary and the coach is like, jump over this Grand Canyon to me. That's a bridge too far. They can't make that leap. They could do so, but they're likely to fall and harm themselves and hurt themselves because we're playing way, way, way beyond their capacity. And so what we do as coaches and as leaders is we're working with someone's capacity. People are not always the best judges of their capacity. Our homeostasis tends to be towards one or the other. So this is a good point for you watching to check in with yourself and be like, am I more inclined towards the version where I'm like, I'm going to the gym and that's what matters? You know, are you more inclined towards that sort of staying too low? Or are you like me, where you're like, fuck this place where I am. I need to be swole yesterday and you do way too much. And that is part of our work. We got to start by distinguishing that. And then what a good coach or good leader will do is they will support you to like get clear on what you want your capacity to be and then usually stretch you a little bit beyond that. And the gap between what you're comfortable stretching into and then what they hold open for you to make the step into, usually there's a bunch of resistance between this. Fear. I don't want to do it. It's going to be uncomfortable. I'm afraid. What if I fuck up? The stakes are too high. Can we come back to here? And so that's part of our work that's called working on a gradient. We're working with the client to see like what allows them to stretch beyond their current capacity, what has them off center, off balance, out of comfort, but isn't just having them run face first into a cliff wall, because no one's going to grow from doing that. And the best way to learn how to do that is 1, practicing, but 2, getting supported by your own coach. Because your coach is going to help you do this and you're going to start to understand the feeling between like the edge that you're comfortable being on, the edge that is uncomfortable but actually within your capacity, and the edge that is you lifting 6,000-pound weights when this is only the 3rd time you've gone to the gym. And that's what we do. We're always in a dance with our clients. Masterful coaching at the master certified coach level of coaching is the art of always staying with your client, but never forcing them, never taking the lead from them, and just sticking with them the whole way. Doesn't that look cool as I do that? I'm on that note, I'm very proud to say I just got a call back that I'd submitted for review to my mentor, who is delightful, a woman named Fran, and it looks like it's a passing call. So it's I need to get an 8 out of 10 on all the things, an average, and I got an 8.75. So I'm very excited about that. It's very cool. It's hard work submitting calls, hard work receiving the feedback. There's a part of me that's just like, fuck, I just want to get it done. But I don't need that certification. And what that part of me that just wants to get it done is trying to alleviate the discomfort of receiving feedback on my coaching and like trying to learn something outside of what I'm already skilled at. So interesting. Mia says, what's the relationship between a gradient and exponential growth? So we should take a moment here and say exponential growth is a very sexy term. And anytime that or 10x, which is ultimately exponential growth, anytime a term is sexy, we should be a little on guard for it. Anytime something, thanks Mia, anytime something's buzzy, we should be a little bit on guard for that fact because there is a, just like if everyone's buying real estate, we should be a little cautious. Warren Buffett, I think it was, said, when everyone is greedy, be scared. When everyone is scared, be greedy. That was a little bit his investment advice. These aren't rules, but the point here I'm making is given that exponential growth is this sexy sounding, very easy to sell and make money from term, we want to be a little bit like, well, let's just get a little curious about it. So incremental growth comes from incremental growth happens when you go to the gym and you work within your capacity and you just you nudge out, nudge out, nudge out, nudge out. Incremental growth is what happens when we're like, here's where I currently am. I'm making $10,000 a year. I'd like to make $12,000 a year. Incremental growth is predictable growth. It's beyond what I've currently accomplished, but I can see already how to get there. It would be like, okay, I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm making 60,000. I really want to make 70,000. And I can already figure out, okay, like I think I could either work 10 more hours a week or I could do X, Y, or Z. Okay, I'm going to do that. Great. So it's not that I don't grow, but it's incremental. Exponential growth is what happens when we're like, here's the paradigm that I operate in, and I am choosing to aim towards a result way the fuck out here, and we get supported to create that. Rather than just like, what you'll do for this result is you'll try to expand this bubble that you're trapped in, your context, to include this new result. So it'd be like, I am making $60,000 a week working 40 hours. I'm really exponential growth. I will double what I'm making. I'm going to make $120,000 a year. And then by expanding the bubble, the way you would do that is you work 80 hours or some other balancing of the same equations. So exponential growth is what happens when we create a result outside of what's currently possible, but we also get supported by someone to create that result in such a way that it's not within the same realm of predictabilities of this bubble that we're trapped in. And to do so, a coach that supports you in that is always working with your gradient. So how much of a result can you stay present to as possible for yourself? How far out can you lean? If someone was like, I've made $60,000 this year, exponential results, I'm going to make $6 billion next year, that's probably like that kind of gradient. But a result that's like 120,000, that might be like that. Awesome. Still in the realm of exponential. So any result that requires a breakthrough, meaning you cannot figure out how to achieve that result doing what you've already done, and you don't already know how you're going to make it happen. That's a breakthrough result. Successfully creating them almost always will require a shift or a transformation or a breakthrough in your being, and creating that is what generates exponential results. So that's how I say they come together, Mia. Okay, time check. Got time for one more. My bladder tells me. So let's talk about pleasure, fun, joy, and leadership. Alexandra asked this question. She was saying, like, can you talk about pleasure energizing leadership? So there's two sides to this. Well, there's a distinction I want to bring in here, which is, let me just get it. Actually, you stay here. I'm going to run to the bathroom and come back, and I'm going to think through this. So you get to just sit in this empty space. It's going to be very quick. I'll be right back. Most daring move ever? You tell me. Going to the bathroom in the middle of a live? We're mixing things up. We're breaking paradigms. This is breakthrough territory that we're in. So, welcome back. Leadership, pleasure, etc. So, the first thing that happens often when people hear the word leadership is they get fucking significant about it. It means something. It's like leadership. I'm here to be a leader. I need to lead, blah, blah, blah. And what happens from that significance? Oh, I was clear of my mic being off, Jess. It's interesting because I've got the live stream playing right below me. But here I'm looking at my version of the feed, which is like a little bit ahead of time. And so I was looking here, and then I saw below me someone open the door behind me and come in, and it freaked me the heck out just now. And it turns out it was me, a little delayed coming and sitting down. So people get really significant, and what happens from that significance is, well, we do what we tend to do when we're significant. So we beat ourselves up. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform. We make leading really meaningful, and we lose access to fun or to playfulness. Or thanks, LA, and thanks for being here. It's nice to see your name show up. We lose access to a lot of the joy that's available. It's hard to find joy in something when you're making it really significant. What are you congratulating me for, Tommy? Thank you. And for what? So I used to play squash. I miss playing squash. It's just really hard on my back, so I can't really do it as much anymore. It's not very good for me these days. But I played it a lot, and I would play games, I would practice, and I would play in tournaments. And with tournaments, I would get super significant. I would like hold all this burden, and like people would be watching, and I was like, I got to play a good game. And it was no fun at all for me. All of that significance took away all my access to fun and enjoying the game. And so tournaments were like work, to the point where I just decided I'm not going to play tournaments. And some of my friends were like, you could like take that on, you could work on that. I'm like, yeah, I know. I do that in a lot of places in my life. I don't want to make squash another place where I'm looking for an ontological breakthrough. I'm gonna let this be a place. Oh, thanks, Tommy. I'm gonna let this be a place where it's okay for me to just contract away from blah blah blah. So we get really significant about our leadership, and then what that does is it has us get really somber, heavy, and then we start to dread it because that's not fun. And because from our somberness and our heaviness, we also get pretty hypercritical of ourselves and or other people. So that's one of the ways it can really go for leadership. The other way it can go for leadership is a reaction to that first one. Oh, so-and-so's heavy, so-and-so's burdensome, so-and-so's a jerk, so-and-so's blah. I'm going to be the fun boss. We could call this like the Michael Scott boss, right? Or the David Brent if you are a UK office watcher. This is the sort of person that's like unwilling. The game becomes fun first and foremost. So I'm going to be their friend first and their leader second. This doesn't work very well, by the way, but never mind that. So it's kind of like the attitude here is I refuse to be that version over there. I'm going to go over here and be this version. Do I have a sneeze coming on? Let's drink some tea and find out. Excuse me. Goes to the bathroom live, sneezes live. Groundbreaking. Feature me on Jimmy Fallon. Let's get me over there. Someone make the intro, So this is a reaction to the first. I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be like this. The trouble, first of all, there is that any reaction so as to not be a certain way reduces your range as a leader, because now you're like, I am unwilling to be that way of leadership because I have judgment about it, that it is wrong or bad or something. Well, now that way of showing up as leader is unavailable to you, and you're going to be a great leader until what's called for is some significance. Like, for example, what happened at the US Capitol. Like, it's not a time for playful joviality. It's like, hey, it's time to be significant. We got to hold some people accountable. That significance is called for. So remember that your capacity as leader is your range and availability of all ways of being and all ways of doing. And the more you shut out ways and say, this is wrong, I'll never do this, I'll never do this, the more you narrow your capacity as leader and take away your ability to show up and be and do whatever is called for to move forward what you are committed to creating. So that's the first start, is that for people that are overly in the gravitas range, a little more fun and playfulness and stuff like that can really move things forward. And for people that are all in the pleasure and joy and fun range, a little more gravitas and significance, or like not making everything bubbly and fun, can really be important. And it's our range that really matters. And what we want to look to as a leader is, what's the place I go to automatically? What is my hangout? What is my sacred cow that I am unwilling to abandon? And that's the place for us to practice. Our range lies outside of that. So where am I willing to practice beyond that? Can I practice being 1% less this and more that other thing I'm avoiding? Can I lean into that? What's the possibility I could see becoming available if I didn't never be funny or playful or joyous or whatever, but also could combine that and integrate all of this? What would that then make available in my leadership? The other thing I want to say is talking about joy, fun, pleasure in terms of personal leadership in terms of like just being fully expressed ourselves. And what I want to say about that is, if you're not having fun, that sucks. And I think that life is important. Like, if we're not enjoying the ride, it doesn't mean life is always fun, but you got to have fun. There's got to be enjoyment and pleasure. And if everything feels like a slog, something's wrong. That's not the game. But the other side of this is that a lot of people, you'll see this especially in what kind of communities? Like communities that label themselves as conscious, communities that tend to be very tantric or yogic, or rooted in embodiment. In a lot of these communities, you'll find that people will make first and foremost their priority is always feeling good, feeling good. I want to feel good in my body. I want to feel good about this. And this is a slippery topic, because it's easy to take what I'm about to say and be like, well, Adam, I don't think you should ever violate the wisdom of the body, which is not what I'm actually saying. So the thing here is that if you are really committed to leadership, part of that means being committed to something greater than yourself. And inevitably, being committed to something greater than yourself will at times be in conflict with you feeling good. There are many mornings when what would feel good to me is to get up on a Friday and just get drunk. Or maybe not just get drunk, maybe it's just not do a live. Like, there's times when I have guests and I'm set to coach them, like, I don't want to coach live today. What if people don't show up? What if this guest sucks? What if all of that? And what would feel good to me would be to sleep in. I'm not going to wake up with an alarm because that's what feels good to me. That's great. That's fine. But that then puts your leadership at the effect of how you feel. It puts what you can cause and create in the world at the effect of your feelings. And so it's not bad. It's not wrong. It's just that it's limiting to those of us that are committed to something greater than ourselves. I am absolutely committed to something far greater than myself. That's why I show up every Friday morning at 10 a.m., regardless of how I feel about it. And what you find in your willingness to do this is that you will expand beyond your current capacity of what feels good. And so the more I practice this, the more I develop the capacity, regardless of how I'm feeling in the moment, to then start to generate myself. And by the end of these conversations, I'm always like, fuck yeah, that felt awesome. I'm so energized by this. But the only way you get to that point is by being willing to practice outside of your capacity for what currently feels good. So what I'm saying here is, you currently have a muscle, a range of what you can feel good with. And if you only ever let feeling good dictate what you do and don't do, you will forever stay inside that range. And so the game of being with more life requires a willingness to let go of feeling good be the thing, and instead let what you are committed to as a leader be what guides you. And in doing so, you will discover more and more, holy crap, that thing I used to dread actually feels really, really fills my cup. My friend, I have a friend, Ernest, who moved out here, and he was saying like, wow, you do like an hour and a half lives. That's crazy. And I was like, yeah, it's super fun. He's like, really? That's fun? Like, doesn't that drain you? And there was a time when it would have, but this is nourishing to me now. This fills my cup. 6 hours would be a lot, but like an hour and a half of this with you guys is amazing. It feels so fantastic. So that's developed. That's me having expanded my capacity to show up as Adam more and more and for longer. I'm not resisting any part of who I am when I'm in this with you. And so it's natural. There's no there's no draining to it. I'm just showing up and being Adam Quiney with you. That's the least draining thing that it can be. Mia says, so we want how we feel to be at the effect of our leadership. I think the way I would put it, Mia, is that we want to be at cause for our leadership rather than having our leadership be at the effect of how we feel. So my leadership is not at the effect of how I feel. My leadership is I am at cause for what I'm committed to as leader, meaning regardless of my circumstances, regardless of how I feel, regardless of how I slept, regardless of whether I'm hungover or not, I show up and create what I'm committed to. I take action in alignment with it. And that is in contrast to my leadership being at the effect of how I feel. I wake up, oh, I'm tired. I got a bad sleep. You know what? I'm not going to go live today, which also lets me get out of doing what's scary. So that's the distinction. At my leadership, I'm at cause for my leadership rather than having my leadership be at the effect of how I feel. Okay. Final simultaneous sip for anyone. I guess it doesn't work because my stream, I realize now, is a little bit behind. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till I see. Oh, and it's not going to work. You know what? I'm just going to sip some tea. I have a vision that one day we will live in a future where this is completely simultaneous and then we can sit together and it's going to be sweet. I just got a Clubhouse invite. I'm winding down here, by the way. I just got a Clubhouse invite. So I've not yet figured out what to do with that, but that platform feels like a place I'd like to be. So I'm going to look for me, add me on there if you're on there. I'm going to start doing some, I don't know what they call it, hosting some conversations around leadership and coaching because that needs to be happening. I have some of these remaining. If you would like a copy of the alpha edition of the Spectrums of Being and you have not gotten one yet, what you have to do is text me, message me, or email me, adam@adamquiney.com. Let me know that you want one. And the proper edition will be coming out some point soon. What do I want to plug today? The new Creating Clients course is going awesome, Andrew. We have 15 people this time. I don't even know how that happened. I was telling my coach, I think I got 13, and then we got on the call. I'm like, holy crap, it's 15 people here. It's going amazing. We have just laid the foundation, and now we're into the first part, which is connection, which you would think when you think like, oh yeah, connection, no brainer. We intellectually know this, but we don't embody it. And in fact, rather than connect with people, we connect, but all of our attention is over here on how do I propose to them? How am I going to get them to want to coach with me? How am I going to get them to the point where I can sell? Fuck, is this even the person with enough money? And all of that is in the way of just connecting. So we're at that point where we're really having people discover the joy that's available in connecting with people, rediscovering that, getting reacquainted with that. That's a lot of what we're doing is wiping off all of the training that's there. And you have a lot of training. Hello, Debrabrata? Is that how I say your name? That is an awesome name, Debrabrata. No, Debabrata. Debabrata. Cool. I love your name. So that's going amazing. We're a little under halfway through the Forge. If you want to know about the Forge, you can go to evergrowthcoaching.com/the-forge. That's our 9-month program. And there's 3 kind of pillars that we work on there. One is transforming who you be. So really coaches and leaders doing their own work so you can really transform the way you show up in the world. 2, mastering the art and skill and magic of coaching. Because leaders coach and coaches lead. Leaders coach because that's how we develop more leadership, and that's your job as a leader. So mastering that skill. And then the 3rd is developing our ability to enroll people in something, whether it's a coaching practice, your software business, or what you're up to as a leader. If we are, most of us rely on convincing or selling or all this stuff that feels horrible. And in fact, the role of leader is to enroll people in it. So It's a really potent experience, 9-month program. You can read more about that at that website I put there, and it's amazing. It's super cool. We're having a great time. I think that's everything. If you are playing a video game that you are loving, I am looking for a new one right now. So if you're like, man, I am loving this video game, I want you to tell me about it. So make sure you let me know about that. And I'm also going to say the last video game I just finished was called Outer Wilds, which was an amazing game. It was so beautiful and simple and profound. And the premise of it, I'm going to talk, thank you, Mia. It's so cool to hear you say that. I'm going to talk about it and then we're going to end. So Outer Wilds, the premise is you're part of this alien species living on a planet. The solar system you live in is very small. So all the planets are like 400 kilometers away from you. So you can travel to them in your spaceship pretty quickly. Never mind the physics of that or anything. And the game starts and you're on your first flight and you get into your spaceship and you take off, and in 22 minutes the sun in the middle of your solar system goes nova. It blows up and you wake up at the same place you were when you started the game. And so the solar system you're in seems to be caught in this 22-minute time loop where it goes nova, it blows up, and then you wake up 22 minutes before. And as you play this game, you learn about this ancient civilization that arrived in your solar system and like created all this technology and started to learn about the solar system. And you discover this mystery, like what is actually going on? And it's somehow they combine all of that with like this very almost like campy, homey kind of vibe. Like at the end of the game, what you're doing is hanging out with your fellow astronauts, roasting a marshmallow over a fireplace. And so a fire pit. It's a beautiful game, very profound. I highly recommend it. It's mostly story driven, and it's just so cool and will move you to tears as you play through it. Skyrim music, man, that is a good game too. Okay, let's wind down there. I love you guys. Thank you all for being here. Invite people to this conversation if they haven't already. Let's have more people be here. Bye for now. See you later.